reading, how your reading comprehension could improve with certain grammar structures. Specifically, we're talking about how to find subject-verb, understanding what a clause is, and sentence types and structures, and how they impact the meaning, all right, like their value. All right, so grammar is key in all aspects, but if we focus on the reading, it can help you with difficult texts. Even easy text actually might be a little tricky sometimes. If you know how to use grammar, you can actually make it simpler for yourself. And it's not just about the text, but also the questions, like multiple choice, true, false, not given, etc. Like so many questions could be made simpler if you understand the grammatical structures they have. In writing, obviously, it would help you to not just improve your grammar scores, but also how you communicate ideas, how you link ideas, you know? So there's a great way that grammar could just help everywhere. In speaking, it will help you with the speaking grammatically correctly, to say the least, but also to help you communicate more effectively. All right, so let's talk about the reading for now. I want you to have a moment to read the paragraph. Feel free to pause the video and try to get the main idea, okay? Identify the main idea in the paragraph without vocabulary. You can't Google the words or anything, okay? So give yourself maybe a minute if you must, or two tops, to understand the main point. All right, then I want you to look at this version of the same paragraph. I've blocked or redacted the parts that are, I don't know, complex or unnecessary, because I want you to focus on the grammar to understand the paragraph. I'll show you how I would do this. But again, pause the video, try to read the highlighted part essentially, and see how much it helps you to understand the paragraph better, okay? Ignore the parts that are blocked like that. Highlight or just these parts. Okay. Now I'm going to explain to you how I would read the paragraph. Actually, let's duplicate that. And I'm going to do this in real time. I'm going to show you how I would read it. So the way I read paragraphs actually is by sentences. And as I read, I focus on the grammar structures a lot to get the main point. Because by focusing on the grammar structures, I can make the task or sentences easy and simple. So here's how. Happiness is some kind of goal because it is good. If we are asked why it's important, we don't need to give explanation, no need for any reason, because it's just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why happiness matters or it's important. It's just good. You see, so far these sentences are connected and they're just talking about how happiness is something that is obviously good and we want it, and there's no need to explain why it matters. This is grammar pronoun. This is very important than this word, mind you, because some of you might focus on this word and think oh, I don't know this word. I cannot understand this part. Actually, this pronoun or referencing tool is more significant because this is telling you, this is connecting to whatever they said before. Since this part is between quotation marks like that, it means this whole thing, that's that. Something I don't know if you know this word, but I'm going to assume that you don't. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't even matter whether you know this word and all of this part. Oh, even actually all this whole part. Because this thing, I'm going to say, because after this, grammatically, it could be probably just something, and it's a singular, this. So I'm thinking that it's referring to whatever they said, that happiness is good and no need to explain why, it just doesn't matter. All of that is said by this guy, this guy says it. And who is this guy? Between two commas, here, we have definition or extra information about this guy. Who is this? Richard Layard. He is this economist and advocate of positive psychology. Okay, so do you see how this punctuation here sometimes can be of great help, because it's telling you literally that this part is extra information, so don't worry about it. All of this was just some extra information, and I could just ignore that part. Let's just do, let's say this. So this thing summarizes, that's the verb, so that's important. Subject verbs are important to communicate idea. So this summarizes the beliefs of many people today. Now, simplify, put it together. This is what many people think. Like everybody wants to be happy and they don't care why they should be happy because it doesn't matter. It's just something that, we kind of want and we should. Okay, that's it. You see like how this part was not that necessary? And I knew that because I know how punctuation works and I know how grammar works. All right, for this guy and others like him, do you see this comma again? This part of the comma is telling you now this part is extra information. So main thing is punctuation, not comma, and for. And if you simplify this, it'll be like for these guys or for all those people, it is obvious, okay, that the purpose of government is to do something. So now they're talking about the purpose of the government. Interesting. The purpose of the government is to promote something. Now, if you know what this word means, good, you would understand even better. But if you didn't, you could simply understand like, okay, they're just talking about these guys, who believe that. And for them, the purpose of the government is something, to do with the well-being. Again, if you know what this means, that'll be good for you. If not, you could just you could ignore this actually, This too is telling you that it is a verb. And obviously, whatever this word means, it is to do something because that's what a verb does. So one more time. For these guys, it's obvious that the purpose of the government is to do something. Like, it doesn't even matter this part, because this is all connected. Yeah, one more time. Happiness is the goal because it's good and we all want to be happy without any reason. And this is what many people believe. And for these guys, the purpose of the government is to do something. The only question is how to achieve it. Again, this it is a referencing tool, which is very, very important. You see like how this referencing tool, it is actually linking the whole or linking to one of the previous ideas. So the question is, how do we achieve this? What are they referring to, do you think? What is it? What are we trying to achieve? The happiness? Or maybe something they said before, right? So because they were talking about happiness, I'm going to assume grammatically that this part is about something good or happiness. It has to be connected to the previous parts because I don't see a linking word to change the idea. So they haven't changed the idea. They're still talking about how happiness is good, everybody wants it, etc. You see, this is how I can use grammar to understand the paragraph better without like knowing all the words. And this is how you could also make things easier for yourself. All right, so that's the question, like how do we achieve that state of happiness or that well-being? Here, positive psychology is the subject of the sentence again, like the second subject. So positive psychology, I'm looking for the verb. Can you find the verb for a moment? Where is the verb for positive psychology? Well, for those who know grammar, they can tell that, do you see the punctuation here? This dash, and do you see the second dash? You know what that means? These two dashes mean, again, extra information, just like the two commas. These punctuations have the same purpose. So there's something extra information or definition of whatever we said before. So now we're saying, okay, the question was, how do we achieve this state of, happiness or whatever? Positive psychology can show the way. That's the verb. That's the most important part now. And what happened in between? There was extra information. Okay. Now, if we wanted to break down this part further, we could, but understand that that part would be extra information. So if there was an extra question, detailed question about that part, I could come back and read it in detail. But for now, I would actually just block it out or just ignore that part for main idea. This is not a main idea. This is how I can use grammar structures to make things easier for myself, and I can read faster because I know where to focus more on for main idea and where I can read faster to, we don't have to focus on everything. So this is how I can be fast. But let's just have a look for a moment, like what this part is. Was it like, what is the definition? What is that extra information about? It's about what positive psychology is. And what is it? It's a supposed science. Oh, it's a science that not only identifies, okay, it can do two things because this grammatical structure not only means like two, yeah, like not only, but also. I see the structural things already, you see? Okay, so it's a science, got it, that not only identifies what makes people happy. So one thing that the psychology does is that it finds what makes people happy. That's one thing. But then it also allows their happiness to be measured. Oh, that's what positive psychology is. It's the subject or science that can tell you what makes you happy and how much your happiness can be measured, etc. All right. So in any case, this whole sentence now, as you can see, the main ideas to achieve that state of happiness, we just need to use positive psychology. Equip this blah, blah, blah. Like this is how I actually read extra parts of the text when I do it under exam conditions, you know, like for myself. I just say blah, blah. And anytime I say blah, blah, it's the extra information. Again, how do I know this? Because of this grammatical structure. It's like, oh, it is punctuation, you see? Equipped with blah, blah, blah. There is no subject here right now. So that part is not important. That's not the main idea. This is actually a grammar structure. We'll talk about this later. They say, okay, I have a subject verb, but you see there's again a comma. So just this whole thing is like extra, whatever. The main idea is here. The government subject can secure happiness. Okay. In a way they never did before. Okay. So that's the main part now. Governments can secure happiness using positive psychology. Because, why do you think that will help? Because happiness is something that is so good and obvious that everybody wants. And that's what many people apparently think. This is how I can make it easier and simpler for myself using grammar. Yeah. Now, if you look at this one, it's a pretty much similar process that we ended up with. All right. So now the question you might have is how you can do this on your own. Now, one thing is that you might be thinking that it was a time-consuming process right now. You might be like, well, like how much time you spent for reading this one paragraph? Because I was explaining it in detail with highlights and everything, yes, it took me maybe a couple of minutes, but I actually do this within 20, 30 seconds. If the text is easy to understand, if not, I might spend maybe like 5 extra seconds or something to understand, but this is how, because I've mastered this process that when I read a paragraph, my brain automatically does that as I read, you know, I'm looking for grammatical structures all the time to make things easier. And I can do this very fast, but I'm showing you the slow motion, like the version, so that you can see what I'm exactly doing. And then the more you do this, the faster you get, right? This is how we learn any skill. Okay. If we look at the grammar breakdown of the paragraph that we just read, we could see sentence by sentence, you know, like one thing, if you've noticed, I was telling a lot while I was reading and explaining was subject verb. The main subject verb, like in this sentence, like happiness is the ultimate goal because it's good. I was intentionally ignoring some of the words like ultimate or self-evident or self-evidently, because these are not the essential parts of the sentence. They are adjectives or adverbs, and they don't necessarily do much to the sentence. They add extra information. The main idea is always going to be in the subject verbs, okay? They communicate the main idea. And you can also see the sentence types. At this point, I'm not sure if you're familiar with sentence types, but if you were, you could read it in detail, like, oh, this is a complex sentence structure. Here's the clause. Here's that clause. Second sentence also is a complex sentence structure. Got it. Okay, let's look at the next. Again, oh, this time we have a simple sentence because the sentence is short like that. But it's not simple sentence because it is short, but because it has only one subject verb. Now look at compared with this one. This is also simple sentence, but do you see like how longer this is compared to this one, right? So we don't, you know, measure sentences based on how long they are or how short they are, but it's about how many or main subject verbs we have. And if you look at this one, this something summarizes something. Like that's it. That's how you can make this sentence simple by using subject verb. And you realize that there's only one subject verb. That means it's a simple sentence. Okay, then we have now compound complex sentences, you know, these are sentences are getting complex, as you say, because there are several subject verbs actually, or several verbs essentially connecting to the same subject. Yeah, as you can see, the sentence is rather complex. All right. So this is how that paragraph we read was rather complex, actually. That's what made it a little bit harder. Because if you think about it, the reading passages have simple ideas, actually, if you, like simplify them. But then what makes them so difficult? Two things. Well, actually, three. One is definitely vocabulary. Another is grammar, because like there's some complex structures there that make things a bit hard. And the third one is the topic. Sometimes abstract topics are a little hard and time consuming to process because easy topics are easy to get. But vocab is not something you can always, do or always learn. Or while you're doing the test, you can't look up the words. You can't rely on the vocab much, honestly. Like the words you would understand. But the words you don't know, there's nothing you can do about them. You might try to pay attention to the context and everything, but it could help as well. Absolutely. You should definitely do that. But when you realize that there's not much you can do, then trying to understand that vocab is not going to help much. What can help is the grammar structure. If you noticed earlier, I was explaining this particular sentence by not telling you what pronouncement means, but I was telling you grammatically why this word doesn't even matter, like even if you knew. And I knew that because of the grammatical structures, right? Okay, so this is how grammar can be really, really helpful. And using that grammar, you can simplify things, and even those abstract topics can become a lot easier to process. All right, if you're ready to learn how to do that, I'm going to explain. So it all starts with, a clause, because I've talked a lot about subject verb. So what is a subject verb? It is a clause, basically. So yeah, as you can see here, anytime you have a subject and the verb, you have a clause. And clauses can give you an idea. That's why I said earlier that when you are looking at grammatical structures and sentences and everything in the reading, you want to pay attention to subject verbs because they give you one idea or thought, and you need ideas to follow. If I just give you random nouns like I don't know, happiness, you have no idea what I'm trying to say about it, And if I just give you verbs, that might also not make any sense. I can just tell you is, are, go, work. I mean, the verbs are not necessarily enough. So, but if I put subject verb together, you're going to understand my point. You're going to understand like, oh, that's what I'm trying to say. That's what she's explaining. So that's why subject verbs or a clause, right, are very important. Okay. Now, let's see if you can recognize what a clause and what's a clause and what's not. Here, happiness helps, is an idea. Like when I say that, happiness helps, you get like, oh yeah, okay, happiness helps. You get an idea, right? So it's a clause. And we have a subject and a verb. I hope you know what a subject and the verbs are actually in English. If you didn't, I'll explain briefly. Like happiness is the, it's like subject, like whatever we're talking about is the subject. Whoever is doing the action is going to be the subject. And the verb is what's happening to that subject. That's going to be a verb. Okay, happiness helps. That's a clause. Because governments promote well-being, whatever, that's a clause as well, because we have a subject, governments promote a verb. But these are not clauses. Yeah, like see if you understand why. To foster happiness or happiness state. We have a verb, you see, and you might consider that these are not subjects because these are objects. Because foster is the verb, but who is fostering it? Or even if you don't know what is a foster, you could think that it's a verb, but who is doing this action? Who's fostering? We don't have that, you see? So that's how you know that this is not, this is just the verb, there's no subject, and it's confusing, We don't get the idea. What's the concept? What's the idea? Or after achieving happiness on a global level, like it could be a very long phrase like that. Again, do we have a subject? Who is achieving? You grammatically know that achieve is a verb, right? Or as a vocab, you know it. But is it, but where's the subject to it, Who is achieving it? We don't know. So that's why this whole thing is not a clause. It doesn't make a sense, like it doesn't give you an idea. It's hard to understand what's happening. So this is how you can differentiate what a clause and what a not a clause is. And this is very important. Okay, so next step. Clauses can be divided into two, independent clauses and dependent clauses. Independent clause, like when you have, again, just the subject verb, yeah? As the name suggests, independent is like independent, it can be on its own. And it gives you one complete idea, okay? That's the emphasis here. It gives you one complete idea. It can be on its own as a sentence. So grammatically, it is a sentence. Grammar is important. Grammar, subject is verb, yeah? Okay. Water, okay, the subject, and evaporates. Like, even if you don't know what is evaporates, you can understand that, oh, something is happening to water somewhere, somehow. Like, this part is not even important grammatically because these are some adverbs in some places. The main thing is the subject verb. This whole sentence is talking about what happens to water, what water does. That might be sometimes more than enough, actually, when you don't know the vocab. And this one is about how grammar, it's talking about grammar and the importance of grammar. See, both sentences, one short, one longer, they're both still independent clauses, and they give you one idea, and it's a complete idea. Okay, now let's talk about what is a dependent clause. If you understand the word dependent, yeah, like it depends on something. You see, it cannot be alone, it cannot be on its own. So dependent clauses begin with a subordinator, such as when, while, because, etc. Like all of these are subordinators. So dependent clauses do not give a complete idea, actually. They give you an idea, but it's not complete. That's the stress here. So it cannot be a sentence on its own. But you have no idea, like how often I see dependent clauses like hanging there on their own without, without a second part. And it's a common problem, actually, in the reading, or I'm sorry, in the writing. Speaking, you kind of don't notice that, actually. Yeah. Such dependent clauses are also called fragment sentences when they're just written on their own, and they're incomplete because fragment means a piece of something. It's not complete. So such sentences will be grammatically wrong. Dependent clauses start with this. Here's the structure, yeah? Like memorize this formula. This is the formula for dependent clause. For example, because he supports the positive psychology, you see, like, why there's ... It's not a complete idea. We want to know, like, so then what? Then what he did or what he does. You see, it's not complete, right? Or when the members of the community follow and accomplish their task given by group mentors, then what happens? It's not complete. You see, this whole thing was a dependent clause. They're both dependent clauses. We have subordination. We have here, because, when, these are subordinations. We have subject verb, but they don't give you a complete, they give you an idea, but it's not complete. You want to know, like, then what happens? So writing dependent clauses, like instead of ... if you write full stop like that, this will not be grammatically correct sentence. Or here, when government is like drinking, you stop here. This is wrong grammatically. It doesn't make sense. It will be a fragment sentence. We should continue. And I hope you know how to continue. You want to give it a try? Like, what would you say to continue the sentence? Because he supports the positive psychology, he regularly practices it. He regularly practices it. Now it's a complete, yeah? And now it's a complete sentence. The same way here, we have to continue with another subject verb, okay? Then we deal with the issue of fragment sentences. So let's revise, right? Subject verb is anytime you have a subject verb and you have an idea, right? And subject verb is the most important part of any sentence because this is how we create the clauses. But then not everything can be a clause, because if you don't have the subject verb or you just have the verb, then it's not a clause. You need subject verb to have a clause to give an idea. But this idea can be either a complete idea, so it can be a sentence, or it is just it's not complete. That's why we have independent and dependent clauses. All right, so we talked about subordinations. So what are these subordinations? Subordinations are these words that you might be familiar with, yeah? Like, I'm sure you know what is if. You know, where is, when, which, despite. but you may not be familiar with how to use them correctly, because I see a lot of people using because, comma, and then subject verb. But I hope you understand now that this is not a correct grammar structure. Because you wouldn't say if, comma, subject verb, right? Like if I succeed on the test, that's not a sentence. You were like, okay, then what happens? If you succeed, then what's going to happen, right? So this is how you use, all the other, subordinators. So, however, but, and are similar in meaning to some of these subordinators, but they're used grammatically differently. So keep that in mind. Yeah, like however, despite, although, yeah, even though, they have similar meaning. They introduce contrast, yeah, like opposite ideas, but they're used grammatically differently. Okay, so for example, if you wanted to use like unless, let's say, unless let's say you do something, right? So subject verb, you have to continue. Unless you study these grammar structures, you may not be able to do well on the test. There, stop. If I write something like, although, let's say, although I studied grammar really well and did my homework, stop. I cannot stop. This does not make sense yet. You can see that this is grammatically wrong. So it doesn't communicate ideas well. So it's like, what? Then what happened? All right. So this is how subordinators can communicate ideas better, right? They explain ideas better. They just help, and if you use them correctly, you can effectively communicate ideas. In the reading, I use these subordinators like all the time. I'll show you an examples of these in a moment. So far, you know what a clause is, what's a clause, what's not a clause, independent clauses, dependent clauses, and you know what subordinators are. These are just these words that change the meaning of the grammar structure, and they change the meaning of the sentence. And they are used in dependent clauses. Yeah, subordinators we need for dependent clauses. Okay. Because we don't need subordinators in independent clauses, because independent clauses have subject verb. That's it. Okay, so now let's talk about sentence types. Sentence types, there are 4: simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. Simple sentences are those that have just a subject and a verb, or we can call them also what? Independent clauses. Compound, the word compound means when something doubles. So right after simple, we have like two sentences, two simple or independent clauses connected with some kind of a linking or coordinating conjunctions. Then we have complex sentences, which are the combination of independent and dependent clauses. So that's why we were studying earlier these different types of clauses, because if you understand the fundamentals of sentence structures, then you can build with those fundamentals, with those basics, so many different structures. So we have complex and compound. Complex is a combination of the two, okay? So you could read the sample sentences here, like pause the video and find the subject verbs, analyze, why this part is this and that part is that. That will help you understand the ideas. All right, in more detail, simple sentences or independent clauses have just subject verb, one idea, and one independent clause, complete idea. Here are examples of how you can make simple sentences, like, for example, this one. It's a simple sentence. Meanwhile, it's just a linky word. You see, it's not a subordination, by the way. It's a linky word. That's why it has a comma. So linking words are used with a comma like that. However, is a linking word. It does not create dependent clauses. You see, even if it's in the middle between subject verb, it's separated by a comma like that, or it could be at the end of a simple sentence like this. Meanwhile is like that too. Okay. The professor, stared. No, not stared. Started. Subject verb, yeah. The professor is the subject. Started is the, let's underline, is the verb. So professor started something. Now the whole thing is just something. This is how the subject verb can really help you to understand. because if you look around, you don't see any other verbs and you don't see any other linking or subordination or anything. So that's why, the main idea is right there. Professor started doing something. The climate can be quite unpredictable. So we're talking about climate, okay, can be unpredictable. So here the main verb is to be, but it's a weak one, as you can see, because it does not communicate an idea sufficiently. So that's why we need extra adjectives around it to understand it better. But we're talking about the climate in the sentence. This is how you can make it simple. All right, so compound sentences are when you have subject verb and you have one of those fanboys and another subject verb. This way, you're essentially giving two ideas or two clauses, two complete ideas in one, linking them with one of these. Fanboys is basically these words like for, and, but, nor, so, yet. These words are used in the middle to connect two parts of the clause. Okay, you can read the example sentences, process how these linkings are connecting subject verb and subject verb, right? Like take a moment to analyze these sentences. Like for example, the company, okay, some company, earned, okay, so that's a verb. Company earned something, obviously some money, but contrasting, this linking word is so important because it's telling you that it's going to be opposite. But we're using this referencing to refer to the company. It lost something, half of the profits following year. This part is extra information. The main is company earned, but it lost. Okay. The amount of something fluctuated and it boomed. Like these are the main subject verb parts. Everything else as you see between are extra things. All right, this is how compound sentences work. Next is complex sentences. Complex sentences are where you have this independent and dependent clauses. Now, here is another beauty of grammatical structures. Like the way I use them when I read is this, because I know that complex sentence structures are not created to complicate your life, actually, for the language users or readers. Complex sentences allow us to communicate better by not writing a lot of short sentences. And the independent clause is there for a reason. It gives us the main idea, while the dependent clause is for extra information. So this is how we create, because sometimes the extra information could help explain what I'm talking about, So, but I don't want to write it as a separate sentence. It would be boring if I spoke like that, or if we use the language like that. Yes, imagine, like if somebody's telling you, prepare for the test. You win, you succeed on the test, you get the prize. You fail the test, you don't get a prize. If I spoke made sentences like that, that'll be very, very confusing. So that's why we have these complex structures. There is a reason for these structures, okay? And this is how essentially you use them. That's where you needed those subordinations, right? Although if after like noun phrases we can make, or while to contrast. And sometimes actually, if you think about it, these subordinators work like linking. So this is how you could also improve your cohesion and coherence in your reading, in your writing and speaking, and use them to understand the connection of ideas in the reading. Like, because I know, like, if I see the structure in my reading test, I see a sentence beginning with because blah, 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 blah. I'll be like, okay, so they're going to give you a main idea here. This is going to be extra explanation for that idea. Or here, when they say like, while blah, 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 they're saying contrast, basically. Like, while something happens, something else happens. So this is the main idea. This one is just a contrast, like opposite. Although, same, you got it, yeah? And by the way, you can actually reverse the order of these, right? I hope you know this. So you can start with the main idea or independent clause at the beginning and connect it with subordinating or dependent clause afterwards. So there could be independent clause first and then dependent clauses, or dependent clause first and then dependent. So you can change these easily. Okay, feel free to read these sentences to understand even better. Or let me show you one example. Although, okay, I'm already predicting some contrast, like although something subject, the amount of this was, you see again, was is a weak one, so I need extra adjective there. The amount of earnings. So we're talking about earnings, but not the earnings themselves, but the amount of them. So the amount was quite low. Okay, so somebody was not making a lot of money compared to the extra information between two commas, yeah? Company X, okay, we're talking about some company. So this company was not making a lot of money at the beginning, but then maintained a steady position at around blah, blah $1 million throughout the period. So we're talking about company X, how much it was making. It was not making a lot of money, but it could keep that amount, which is good because it never lost in a way, yeah? So this is how I can make sentences simple and easy by using grammatical structures, subject verbs. Okay. Now I want you to look at these and try to find the subject verb. Okay, pause the video, look at the first one, and let's see if you can find the subject verb. All right, now let's check. The way I would read it, the global renowned professor, we're just talking about this person. So that's a professor, that's the subject of the sentence. And right after the comma, I'm already seeing extra information, so that's not important. I need a verb. Oh, delivered, good. So now I can simplify it like that. Professor, some kind of professor from some place, delivered. And what professors can deliver, thing, yeah, like something. Delivered a lecture. Okay, delivered a lecture on some kind of something, on some kind of topic, whatever. Not important for the main idea. This is how I can use subject verbs, or how I can read it faster and understand. Now, it's not just only in the reading. When I'm proofreading my essay in my text, I can do the same thing, Or I can start simple in using like we can start with the basics, like subject verb, and say, okay, so there's this professor gave a lecture. That's it. That's my own main point. But now I can enrich that statement with extra information like that, using more vocab like this, right? Or giving extra information about the subject, etc. So this is how I can make the sentence a little bit better. But if I can make it better, I can also make it simpler. Okay, so this is how you're actually doing. So the subject is professor, and the verb is delivered. Okay, this is how you can do this. Now try the same with the others, okay, for yourself. All right, so that ends our lesson 1 on subject verbs, what they are, why they matter, and different grammatical structures. Okay. And after you try this, you might also actually want to try this text and apply the same thing. Subject verb, sentence structures, and notice where the main idea is, where the extra information is. Raise your awareness on like structural grammar structures in a practical way like that. If you learn it this way, then it might be easier for you to be able to use them correctly yourself later in your writing or in your speaking. But the first step starts with, it starts with understanding it, first of all, in practice. Your homework is going to be trying to read more reading passages and looking for main subjects and verbs. Because sometimes there might be actually several subjects and several verbs, but how do you know which one is important? We will explore that more in detail, but for now, at least when you, for example, let's see. Okay, I'm going to show you one more example of how you can do this better. Because right now you might be like, what do I do when there are several subject verbs? Okay, so I see, although I know that this is subordination. Okay, I'm going to use different colors to highlight different things. All right, after subordination, do you remember the rule? Subordination plus subject and the verb. So let's look for that. Latest medical breakthrough. Okay, so essentially we're talking about some kind of breakthrough. So that is going to be our subject. Now I need to find the verb. Oh, breakthrough has. Okay, so again, to be and to have are a little bit weak verbs, So when I just say breakthrough has, or he has, it might not be quite complete, idea. Like you might be like, oh, what he has, or breakthrough has what. So that's why it might help if you read a little bit, more like after. Okay, so I have a subordination. I have subject and the verb and then something, yeah, like potential to da, 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 da. And you might wonder right now, revolutionize. Isn't it a verb? It is a verb, but it's extra. You see, it's not the main verb, because when I say main verb, we're talking about the subject and its verb. If the verb is just some random verb later that it's not connected to the subject, then that is not a main verb. Okay, because this revolutionize is not the breakthrough, or even if it is, I mean, like it doesn't make the change, because this revolutionize is about the quality, the potential. So this is how you can know that this verb is extra verb. It's not important. And I see comma. Okay, let's highlight that too. Then what? Researchers. Okay, so now we have another subject. And where's the verb? Need to do something. Yeah. Okay, so this is how you can make it simple. This is how you can decide for yourself that this is a complex sentence structure or complex compound sentence structure. Nah, right? Because we don't have any fanboys here. So it has to be a complex sentence structure, and it has several subject verbs. The main idea is here. This part is the independent clause with the main idea, and this part is extra information, and it's the dependent clause. So try to read subject verbs like that and let me know how much knowing subject verbs and using them properly in your readings can help you understand, and improve your scores.